Bonjour, bonjour à toutes et tous. Bonjour à toi, Anthony. Hello,
Bonjour.
Anthony. So happy to have you with me today. I feel a bit blessed and honored and a bit impressed as well because you had such a profound impact on my discovering of hypnosis.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice to know.
yeah, and I don't know, we'll definitely dive into that. Your your work with impromptu hypnosis. That was I think, a foundation for many people who practice street hypnosis in France as well and in the world.
Yes, it did help
Um,
many get started.
yes, and your book, Reality is Plastic, was quite seminal in many ways. Let me ask you first, what is the title you use? Do you present yourself as a hypnotherapist, as a hypnotist, as a practitioner in hypnosis, and the reasons why? And then I guess we will nicely go into the framework of our practice and how we can help hypnotherapists work better.
Sure. Well, primarily, I call myself a hypnotist. I refer to myself as a hypnotist if I meet someone, even if I think it might be a therapeutic uh, relationship. I generally start with hypnotist, um, but I'm not precious about that. I think, many times, yes, the frame will then become hypnotherapy. It'll be things that the person wishes to change. Sometimes the relationship I have with clients is more of a coach. I don't call myself a hypno coach. You know, it's just that the nature of the relationship is coaching, a coaching relationship. With therapy, the nature of that relationship is a therapeutic relationship. So I'm always going to bring hypnosis to those things, to that work, to those relationships. Um, Sometimes I perform, I may turn up as a mentalist or someone who's playing mind games or a stage hypnotist, but primarily I keep it as clean as possible and just say, I'm a hypnotist. Yeah. I guess the
Amazing.
main, sorry, I guess the other part of your question, the reason why, because it guarantees a response. If I say I'm a hypnotist, generally for most regular people, you're the first one they've ever met, and you may be the last one. So uh, that something will always come back. There's always a response. That's the same if you say hypnotherapist, to be honest. But yeah, there we go.
Excellent. I think you just mentioned the difference between coaching and therapy. And can you enlighten us a bit about the difference you see between those two approaches and whether you practice both?
Yeah, certainly. So for me, the most of what I would call my therapy work is a relatively brief encounter. So I typically see my therapy clients maybe between 1 and 4 sessions. In fact, my clients book 4 sessions. That's how they engage with me as a therapist. Um, but for most habits and fears and blocks and compulsions, our goal is to help them with that single thing. And we can normally do that within 4 sessions. If it's a coaching relationship, there's a difference in the relation. I keep using this word relationship today. It's more as if I am with you on this. The person may have some patterns of behavior which need therapy. They may have fears about stepping out and speaking up and so on. So there are elements of that. But the coaching relationship is it's more involved. There tends to be contact between sessions. There tends to be homework for the person to do. There tend to be actions. And I would say the reason I provide coaching is because I had three people say the same thing to me. I know what to do. I just need someone to hold me accountable. And the third time I heard that, I was like, I can do that. I can hold you accountable. And, it can be fun along the way. And I've had coaches, and essentially that's what happens. They're very good at holding a, compassionate, but ultimately unforgiving mirror in front of you. So when you're saying, this is what I'd like to do, and this is what I kind of need to do, and this is where it falls down, um, having someone in your corner who shows up when you do and is as committed to that outcome as you are, to me, is a coaching relationship. So it tends to, well, often that engagement takes place over months. It may be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Sometimes it's shorter if there's a very specific goal. But I guess my level of, let's just put it this way, I've done thousands of therapy sessions. I don't really need to do any preparation before a session, and I don't need to do a lot of work between that session and the next one. With a coaching relationship, I'm much more likely to go deeper into, looking at how we can get that person where they want to be. And I'm much more likely to be following up. So there's some crossover for sure, but the relationship is different.
Listening to you, it seems that for the same goal, you could go for a more therapeutic approach or a more coaching approach. Is that right? Or is it also goal-dependent choice of yours?
I guess it would depend on the goal, but let's say, for example, as a coach, often it's about business. The person has a business, they have a passion, they have done some work, but they want to take things to the next level. They would like to scale, they would like to step up and be a performer, and they would like to do that in a particular realm, perhaps the corporate realm. I have experience of these things. So if the only thing getting in their way was they had a fear of public speaking or they had a creative block, then sure, a therapy session may help. But as with a goal like that, generally there are other facets to it as well. There are activities that you need to engage in. There are steps you need to take. There are calls you need to make. And again, we tend to identify a single step. But when you look at it, when in the clear light of a coaching conversation, the bar appears to be set so low that you can't fail, because it's just make 5 phone calls. It's just make a 60-second video, right? So step by step, we get there. Yeah. Again, there's crossover. It could involve both.
Nice. A question about this number 4. Where does it come from? Experience? To be honest, it sounds familiar, because in some of the trainings I had, they say between 3 to 5 sessions with hypnosis to do therapy. And the more I went and the more I go with this practice, the more I realize many times it's sound. And sometimes for the people who already listen to my interviews and podcast, I sometimes come back to this situation where people can have childhood traumas with attachment issues, where you need to develop a safe and trusting relationship before even allowing yourself to go in hypnosis. So obviously, I project onto you the fact that this frame can be flexible. But yeah, can you tell us a bit more about this number 4 and where it comes from?
Yeah, well, I've been doing hypnotherapy for nearly 25 years, something like that. And I got into it. The focus of my business was helping people quit smoking.
All right.
And I built my business by targeting people who wanted to quit smoking. And they, of course, sent me other clients, and I got more and more work for phobias and fears and blocks and all of the things a therapist may see people for. But I saw thousands of smokers, like 3,500, before it even, slowed down. And I also had a guarantee approach. So I used to charge, decent money, but it was a single session. If you needed a follow up, there was no charge for the follow up. But if you didn't, then you didn't need to come for a follow up. And if you didn't quit, or at any point in the future you blew it, you could come back for the follow up or have your money back. No questions asked. You called a free phone number. It was just sent to you. You didn't even have to speak to me. So my mindset as I grew as a therapist was really about still kind of a mindset to some degree of go all in on that first session. Aim absolutely for that person to leave the first session, ideally free of their pain, free of their problem, free of their phobia, and then see what happens. Right. So I was kind of in a position of, if I thought they needed a second session, I should tell them. If it was clear that there was more work to do, then we should do that work. So I was quite locked in to this approach and business model. Okay. I don't actually think it's a healthy business model. I'm not recommending it anymore. But at the time, it was how my dad got started, and it worked for us in that we both, from almost the moment we started, were full-time therapists, seeing 20 to 25 clients a week, and doing a group session every week for like 5 or 6. So as time went on, and I grew a little as a therapist, and had just got more experience, I began to value a follow-up. So with the exception of smoking, I kept those terms I described. If you needed a follow-up, with everything else, I always did a follow-up. Okay, so there was always a second session. And I realized that after the first session that there were one of 3 outcomes. One was the problem had gone. The pain had gone. They hadn't had a cigarette, hadn't needed one, weren't scared, weren't triggered. It was easy. It was painless. It was kind of miraculous. We'd done it. The response was no longer there. I know that's possible for many things. But I also saw a lot of people who we may have liked to think it was a success, but there was still some work to do, or at least they would benefit from the support of a second session. They may not have had a cigarette, but they may have had some intrusive thoughts. There may be someone visiting, and that was making them think about it because they always smoked together. So, in other words, I started to see that there is always value in a follow-up. At the same time, I still, to some degree, rallied against therapists suggesting, oh, it must be 12 sessions. It's a 6-session protocol. And my dad was trained that way. It was always 12 sessions. A very good business model. It's a much better business model.
It is.
Okay. And it can be delivered authentically if that's how you've trained and that's how you think you bring the most value, right? It can still be of value. But I had a bias, and I looked at that and thought, it's not necessary, and it can encourage a reliance on the therapist. It can encourage a reliance on hypnotic experiences, and I didn't like it. But there was a moment where, actually partly just a business influence. I remember Jason Linett talking about higher value services. So not just putting your price up, but actually how do you deliver a higher value service? What would that mean if this was a better service? Take two therapists kind of doing the same thing. What would it mean to give a higher value service? And what it would mean is a good explanation of things before you've even made a call. It would mean a an intake call, a discovery call, a strategy call, if you like. Let's genuinely see if we're a good fit for working together rather than making you book. So doing that call, onboarding our clients for that call. They get a video. They're encouraged to, we're going to have a 20-minute chat so that we can get the most from that. I'd like you to turn up in this way. Booking of a session. They are onboarded for that session. There are things that they get sent to make it as close to perfect conditions as possible. So they understand what to expect. So we can save time with some of the discussion and things. And what else would be some of what I described earlier. I'm with you on this. Whether this takes one session, two, three, four, I'm with you on this. So although it's not quite what I described as a coaching relationship, 4 sessions takes some of the pressure off of the first session. Progress, even a small amount, is now something we can build upon. It's less black and white. We can iron out the creases. And basically, if the fear has gone, let's say the fear has gone after a single session or 2 sessions, we can't provoke it, it's gone. Then you're clearly someone who has the capacity to alter their experience, to change their mind. So what I can do with session 3 and 4, or any sessions that are left, is I can teach you self-hypnosis. I can better equip you for going forward and not needing a therapist, because there are still that you're going to grow again. You're going to be stretched again. There will be scary things that happen again. There will be traumatic events that happen again. But can you be better equipped after overcoming one of those issues? And I believe you can. So it's not that I was trained in that way. It's certainly not that I have a 4-session protocol. I don't know what I'm going to do in session 2, 3, and 4. I don't know. I don't say weight loss, I do this in session 1 and this in session 2. I kind of know what I'm going to do in session 1, but session 2 is based on where you're at and how I can strengthen your resources and better equip you going forward. So 4 works for me. There is some science out there, some research actually suggesting that the best results for hypnotherapists who are helping people quit smoking come with 3 sessions. There's actually, it's one study, but it suggests that there is a value in following up. So even with that now, if a smoker books, all my clients, every single therapy client books for a minimum of 4 sessions, and I will see where they're at and support them in, having the life they want.
Excellent, crystal clear. I just got the idea to check with you. You still receive actual clients because you're a trainer, you're a performer. You still receive
Sure.
people that want to quit
Yeah,
smoking, have phobias.
My personal website, anthonyjacquin.com, is solely about therapy.
Excellent. And so you said it somehow, but let me make it as clear as possible. You're saying that in your organization, there will be the taking care of the client as soon and as good as possible from the moment he gets your name or he goes on your website to the moment he leaves the therapy or the coaching.
Yeah.
And you do actually have a phone call to make sure there is a right fitting between you and the person. You actually do that, right?
Yeah. If you go to my website, actually, there's only one thing you can do, and that is it. You can't book a session on my website. You can't get into my calendar. You can't do that until we have. I prefer to just call it a no obligation chat rather than a strategy call. I've called it different things. It's a no obligation chat, and every now and again, it's not that often, but every now and again, we realize, or the potential client realizes that, no, this is not the right time. They made that call for this reason, and but most of the time, what happens is they've already done their homework. They've already thought about hypnotherapy. They've compared some websites, or they've had a referral. They come to my website. They book the discovery call. Most of them have one, sometimes two objections left. They have two questions that they vary, but they have one, just I've tried this before, but will it work for me? Or I don't really believe in hypnosis, but my friend, had success with it. So they have a couple of objections, and we have a conversation, and that's it. They're then encouraged to book. Yeah. When that happens, the same kind of thing happens. They get an email, they get a couple of short videos to watch, telling them, what they can expect in the session, the best way they could show up, technical stuff, be on your computer rather than a phone, be sat at a chair where there's an arm on the chair, somewhere you can relax. It doesn't have to be completely silent. If you want to let someone know you're doing it, then of course you can. They read through a few terms and conditions, things like that. Very brief. I keep that to a minimum, but there are some things which are contraindicated for hypnotherapy. You can take care of that. You can take care of that even at the discovery call stage. And of course, outside of the actual in-person session or chat, this is all automated. So this is triggered by them booking in Calendly, receiving an email, watching an unlisted video, taking the next step. And I have one real influencer, if you like, business wise, a business mentor whose name is George Bryant. And you could kind of sum up his work by saying it's the subtitle of his work is Relationships Beat Algorithms. And the customer is on a journey. If you think their journey starts with booking the session, you've missed a lot of people. A lot of people have fallen off because they needed to build some trust. They needed to get over their objections. So every opportunity for contact, it's not a big sale. It's not like time scarcity and prices lowering. It's trying to, build a relationship and deal with their objections along the way. So these calls and just the support of, what's going to happen when I call the therapist? Can I do it from work? Am I going to get upset? People are having doubts, and we can automate the helping them overcome those things.
Amazing. You somehow said it. Let's check it out.
Yeah.
That your first session was quite prepared. I've been translating Bob Burns' book, Real or Imagine, is going to be released soon,
Very good.
and is a lot into scripting, at least the first session, to be really prepared and really professional. And I totally agree with that. He also uses a phone call, I believe, no, I'm sure, and it is also scripted, or it's well prepared. I believe, and I wanted to check it out with you, that is also quite clear in your mind, what you're saying, how you're saying it, and what is it you're looking for within this what do you call it? The
The-
no
a
obligation
no
call,
obligation chat.
no obligation chat.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's scripted. I know some of Bob's steps. I love Bob Burns' his work. I actually essentially use the first step of his technique, the swan, as my route into engaging someone with hypnosis, because I do nearly all of my work online. Superb technique. I use it in its most basic form, keep the questions within the realm of reason, but I love it because um, for 20 years, my thing was to do this kind of rehearsal with my dad's technique, a power lift. It's in my book, Reality is Plastic, the power lift induction, which puts your hand in this position. And then the next thing we do is create an idiomotor movement. Obviously, Bob just came along and reminded us we can just start there. We don't even need to call it an induction. We can just say, let's try something. So that sits very well with me. I use it a lot. But Bob does have a few systems for uh, how he deals with questions like, "Oh, will it work? Can you help?" And his calls, I'm sure, and they work very well. They give you a framework, and it's worth thinking it through. Um, I don't have that much of a structure, but I send him a video saying, when we get on this no obligation chat, I'm going to ask you, what do you want? And I can tell you now that most people tell me what they don't want. So that's okay. But I'd like you to think it through. If the work we did together was a success, what would be different? How would you know? So kind of the magic wand question starts our conversation. And I say, is there anything else you'd like to ask? And normally there's something they'd like to ask. We deal with that. I tell them how it works, what their expectations can be. And I'm also heavily influenced by the work of Human Givens. They're an outfit in the UK, so good.
Excellent work.
Such massive contributors in terms of, you know, especially with regard to depression, but their APEP model, their particular version of basic human needs, it's absolute gold. I encourage anyone, any kind of therapist, to read their main book. One of their, musts, if you like, is that you should absolutely expect to feel at least a little bit better after that first session. Therapy should not make you feel worse. It should not be like, oh, I've given the history for 2 hours and oh, I clearly have work to do. No, the person should leave feeling upbeat, energized, have hope, have some kind of strategy, things they can do, things they can work on. So I try and keep those first interactions, like that, very, very positive outcome. I know everything's a cliche, but outcome orientated, solution focused. I'm only interested in really in what you want. I don't need a huge history take. Of course, in practice, there's normally some information exchanged, but I'm not going to spend 60 minutes talking about your past or asking you questions. We're going to get into the work pretty quick.
Excellent, an excellent transition about history. I mean, you've got quite a history with your father being who he is, Freddie Jacquin, a renowned hypnotherapist and hypnotist. In France, we have this situation. It's been there for a while. I believe it's the same in the UK between psychologists and psychiatrists, doctors who can practice hypnosis without a doubt, for mental illnesses and many difficulties. And more people, to whom I belong myself, who are not psychologists or psychiatrists, who actually practice hypnosis. It's not settled yet. It's been there for a while. I don't know if it will be settled. What seems to be evolving now is that there are more and more people like me, and more needs for us, and those doctors and psychologists seem to have less time to train and less time to practice. I can be curious about the duration of your sessions, especially the first one, if it's
Hmm.
longer than the others, to ensure the best result, or the
Yep.
person lives in a better shape than how he enters. Are you yourself a psychologist? Did you study psychology, or did you go straight into hypnosis? And yeah, can you tell us about the situation in the UK
Yeah.
regarding this situation?
Okay. Well, I'm not a psychologist, although I did study psychology in sixth form, the bit before university. But no, I'm not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a doctor, or a dentist. I am a lay person. That's what we call someone who's not one of those things, who who has studied hypnotherapy and is practicing hypnotherapy. So it's kind of the same situation, I believe, here as it is in France, which is it's not quite unregulated. Um, I'm not sure if you use that term anyway, but it's not unregulated. It's what's known as self-regulated. Okay, and there's a slight difference. It's self-regulated. It's very close to unregulated. It means there isn't an official governing body. There isn't an official board of oversight, even though we have over 100, just in the UK, over 100 bodies and organizations that sound like the UK Hypnotherapy Organization Association, the British so and so, and there's over 100. So those kind of bodies and organizations are self-appointed bodies and organizations. I'm sure they have a good remit and some great ideas. What most have is a code of ethics, which hasn't really changed in 2000 years. It's the same code of ethics you'd have got in ancient Greece. If you're purporting to be some kind of therapist, it's something we should all try and live up to, but it's not the law. Um, they may have a membership, a complaints procedure. They may have a dedication to continued professional development. So it's not of no value, but it, it's self-regulated. It varies. It is what it is, and it's not that you have to do that. Um, if you are a medical professional and you would actually like to use hypnosis in your practice, then in the UK there is actually, as far as I know, only one course which is the official course that doctors and dentists and so on can do. It doesn't mean they can't do other training. Of course they can. But in terms of an approved course for medical professionals, there's really only one. And that's okay. It's led by John Butler, who's done an incredible work, you know, doing operations and hypnoanesthesia. I think he had an operation on himself where he just used self hypnosis. It was televised and things. So you might imagine then, well, there's kind of a divide, right? But it's not so much a divide. And I've spoken to the gentleman who was the head of the British Medical Association's wing with regard to hypnosis, and sometimes you can get the impression that they think that people like you and I are we use the phrase cowboys here, which, fly by night. We are charlatans. It is dangerous because it's unregulated. But when I spoke to him, he said, well, actually, that's not really the case. It's just that within our own profession, we are trying to adhere to a standard. It's not like they're even saying it's the best training or the best course or anything else. Often the techniques, when they're standardized in that way, become um, very repetitious. And, I would hope that with some more flexibility in the practitioner, perhaps we could also, get good results or better results. Um, so it's not like there's a war going on. I don't think they think about us too much. I think there's plenty of doctors and dentists who, would value sending someone to a hypnotherapist if it helped their client who, had a phobia of being at the dentist or couldn't have general anesthetic and needed some local anesthetic. We know we can achieve the equivalent with suggestion, with words. So um, I don't see it as a battle. I just see it as it's an odd status quo. It's an odd the condition the situation we find ourselves in is slightly strange in that there's an abundance of good scientific research, academic research about the nature of hypnosis. And there's a bunch of good academic research, peer reviewed science about what we can do with hypnosis. I don't want to generalize too much, but most hypnotherapists do not keep up with that, do not read that. They talk about hypnosis in what I would affectionately call folk psychology terms. So many of the seeming pillars of hypnosis, a state of hypnosis, going into a trance, going deeper, putting you into hypnosis, bringing you out of hypnosis. Much of this stuff is completely I don't say unscientific. It's of no interest actually to most credible academics. They are not talking about going into a trance. They are not talking about your conscious and unconscious mind. They are not trying to bypass your critical faculty. That stuff from Dave Ellman and so on is, even Erickson, is not the science of hypnosis. It's very valuable practitioner led folk psychology. So I would hope that medical professionals do pay more attention to that stuff because they have access to the journals, to the libraries, to the information. We have access to on Google Scholar and so on. But I would hope that they would pay more attention to it. But to be honest, when I speak to a doctor or a dentist, most of them are completely unaware of it. Most doctors are unaware that with a single session of hypnotherapy, treatment outcomes, post-operative treatment outcomes, and there's a number of them, not just being free of pain, many, are better for 86% of people across the board, in terms of their comfort levels, how quickly they recover, the relationship they have with their treatment, as well as less pain, less complications, less anesthetic. There's no pill that's doing that. There's no medicine that's doing that. So, and that's a single session. And actually, in that piece of research, the session was recorded. It was just a recording. It was just a standardized, scripted session. Do doctors know that? I mean, do dentists know that? Are they aware that long-standing phobias don't always, but the possibility exists that that could be gone potentially in minutes, that chronic pain could reliably be reduced And over 70% of people, they will experience significant pain relief with just a few minutes. Forget multiple sessions, just a few minutes of engagement of their attention and some dissociation, some symbolism, some imagining. That chronic pain could reduce significantly. And in some cases, it could disappear because of what they're already capable of. Not because they're in a trance, not because they're going 10 times deeper, not because their unconscious has overcome the fear. We can use all of that language, but it's just a metaphor. I would like more people to be aware of the great news that's sitting right there in these journals. I think it helps. I think it would help doctors and dentists to pay more attention to it, and if they could refer, to refer. You know, the whole time they're thinking, "What is this trance? Can I get stuck in a trance?" That's very off-putting for clinical professionals. So I think we can build a bridge. In the UK, we've got a wonderful event run by Adam Eason called the UK Hypnosis Convention. So it's full of practitioners like you and I and everyone else. There's, many different presentations, a broad church, but there is also this theme of interest in academics who are not therapists. They're not interested in being therapists. They're interested in finding the truth about hypnosis and what we can do with it, how we can scale it. Can we put it into headphones, VR, whatever? Building a bridge between these two worlds is important. And I don't personally think about conflict of their doctors and we're lay people. My dad often sums hypnosis up actually, but just say, it's just words. It's just imagination. That's it. That's what it comes down to. We have a natural, innate, freestanding ability to alter our experience. And we need a way to get permission sometimes to do that. And I think culture gives us different methods, and it just so happens that hypnosis is one of our methods. It's one way of imagining things differently so that you get a different outcome.
Amazing, really interesting. Um, I I don't believe for most people in France as well there would be a conflict. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe some medical professional would like hypnosis to be,
Sure.
let's say, the hypnosis we use, hypnotherapy, to be reserved to such professions. But it doesn't feel like it's that mainstream. My main purpose here is actually to look into how both populations can learn to live together better, and especially since for lay people such as we are, we might not have the background or the understanding of what we can do, what we should not do. What are your limits? I don't know, in terms of psychopathology. I think also of a systemic approach. Let's say the difficulty the person has is not really intrapersonal. It's not really her problem, but it belongs to the system. And if you try to do hypnosis to her or with her, then it might be even worse, because it would give the idea that the problem would be hers when it's not. And I believe those questions are really important in terms of making our practice safe, which is the main interest, I believe, of doctors and psychologists and
Yep.
non-lay people. How, as a practitioner and as a trainer, how do you help your trainees, and how do you work so that your practice is as safe as it can be?
Well, I think there are a number of ways that can be achieved. Providing your client with good information in advance about what they can expect, the kind of things you're going to do, even perhaps what it doesn't involve, because some people have ideas about hypnosis. Those ideas may come from TV, movies. They may think hypnosis is all about regression and, it's going to be painful and difficult and lengthy and so on.
Reliving
So,
your traumas.
well, it's not just hypnotherapy. I mean, 70% of all psychotherapists engage in revisiting the past, going over the past, whether you call it regression or not. In fact, let's be more specific. Over 70% of psychotherapists, when asked in an anonymous questionnaire, said that they do try and recover memories. Right now, we know that
70%.
70% of psychotherapists engage in recovering memories. They may not call it that, but that, was a legacy from Freud. And I'm not blaming Freud, because Freud even gave up the necessity for doing that, right? And I'm not saying it can't benefit someone. Occasionally, of course, we call it revisit and reassess, an imagined event, because it's no longer the event, it can only be imagined. But that is the backbone of many systems of talking therapy, is we have to find the cause, we have to regress the cause, we have to go there. So that's as an example. I don't think it's healthy for that to be the backbone of someone's system. I think you should do as little of that as possible. But coming back to your question, we can help our clients by ensuring they are better informed to some degree. We can help our clients in advance by giving them a clear idea about contraindications. So things where it would not be advised to use hypnotherapy. And the word itself is a medical word, it's a clinical word, but we can get the idea. It's when if someone had an allergy, then surely you wouldn't want to give them a medication that contained the thing they are allergic to. If someone had an allergy to wearing plaster of Paris, then you would not wish to put them in plaster of Paris. Okay, so there are some contraindications which should be considered absolute. Okay, and again, in the real world, of course, does it mean you couldn't help? Well, not necessarily, but in practice, it seems that hypnotherapy is contraindicated for someone who's had a diagnosis of schizophrenia. It's contraindicated for someone who's had a diagnosis of bipolar. Essentially, it's contraindicated for people whose condition means they are, to some degree, delusional. They are experiencing delusions. So in the in kind of old school, and this is almost folk psychology language now, we might think of the difference between neurosis and psychosis. Psychosis, the main difference would be, to some degree, that person is not just, say, for example, feeling paranoid. They are believing that people are actually talking about them or whatever. There's some delusional quality to it. So in such cases, they should really go and see their doctor and find out, where that's coming from. And perhaps they'll probably end up with some kind of psychotherapist at some point. But to protect ourselves, we should think of certain things like that as being absolute. Nearly all of the other contraindications are relative, meaning if someone is epileptic, there is nothing, as long as you're not going to be like triggering them if they're one of the, I think it's about 4% of people with epilepsy have seizures triggered by flashing lights, the kind of cliche. So it's only a small percentage, but assuming we're not going to be flashing lights, can we work with someone who's epileptic? Well, yes, we can, because there's nothing specifically about hypnosis which would trigger a seizure. Are they stable on their medication? Can they come and see you at a time of day when they're most stable on their medication? In other words, it's a relative contraindication. It's something we should be aware of. And there are many things like that, to do with blood pressure, heart, pregnancy, cognitive impairment. Would it be right to be working with someone who couldn't quite understand the terms and the models you're speaking in? Probably not. So how can we ensure safe practice and best practice? We can educate our students about contraindications, and because in the moment it's easy to think the worst thing that can happen is nothing. The worst thing that can happen is I can't help them. And most of the time, that will probably be the case. But occasionally, you could make things worse. You could make things worse. You could certainly, they could misunderstand the nature of the part you are speaking to. They could misunderstand the therapeutic relationship. So we can filter out people who are not suited to working with us, and we can encourage the rest to go and speak to their doctor about hypnotherapy and find out if it would be okay for them to seek hypnotherapy. So they don't need a referral from the doctor, but the doctor would say, yeah, it's a chronic pain. Your body is healed. If that person can help you with that chronic pain, then go, and it's safe to do so. We've checked it out. It's not a tumor. It's just a migraine. We've checked it out. It's not stomach cancer. It's irritable bowel syndrome. Go and see a hypnotherapist. That's okay. So there's lots we can do beforehand. Yeah.
It just takes a well-informed doctor, which is not always the case, but I believe more and more academic papers and more information is out
Yeah.
today. And
But that's the reality of it. It's really about safeguarding. It's about protecting yourself. You're not a doctor. So if the person says, I have unexplained headaches, they've come out of nowhere, I've had them for a year, we're not doctors. Go and see the doctor. If they see the doctor, they get checked out, and the doctor says, you know, painkillers are all I can offer you, and that's okay, but painkillers and say they're not working for the headaches, then it's not that the doctor needs to know everything about hypnosis and hypnotherapy, but they do have access to the information. I mean, they can get on their computer and find out. They will have been, educated in how to make decisions about which medication they give their client, and it's the same about, which style of therapy could benefit them. What's interesting? I train a lot of people, and sometimes someone will just get in contact with every dentist in their town and say, I'm a hypnotherapist. I help people overcome anxiety about dentistry or phobias of dentistry. And you know what? They get an incredibly positive response. Oh, fascinating. Come in, have a talk to us about it. We would love to offer that as a service. So it's not that, yeah, it's not impossible to, even as a lone practitioner without a medical degree, it's not impossible to build that bridge. Doctors' surgeries will often have a notice board, and there'll be, if you help people overcome anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome, they're quite happy to put something in there. So it's worth just having a conversation.
definitely. And obviously, the best people who send clients are doctors with whom you were lucky enough to help their clients overcome something.
Yeah,
And then maybe they knew, maybe they discovered, but they realized that it's a practice that can be really helpful. And I
yeah,
believe all of them, or at least most of them, are really interested in delivering the best service they can as a team, because they know, well, they can do their medicine, and there is many other factors, and I believe their intentions are really positive, and looking forward to helping their
absolutely.
clients as
Yeah,
by patients. This
absolutely.
is
And the thing is, their surgeries, doctors in the UK are incredibly busy.
Yes, in
Um,
French as well.
I think I don't want to misquote it, but the average session time with a doctor, I think it's about 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, and they have to make a decision in a very brief amount of time. So, and it takes time to get an appointment and all of those things. Obviously, I'm sure they would love to give more time to people, but that's the nature of the demand. Now, a huge number of people coming through their surgery are doing that because they have a smoking habit, because they're suffering with chronic pain, or they're suffering with some kind of anxiety problem, a stress or an anxiety problem. Over 10% of the population have irritable bowel syndrome. Over 10%. It's a similar number of the population are experiencing chronic pain that's having a detrimental effect on their life. Now, if we just take those two things, not phobias, not quitting smoking, but just irritable bowel syndrome and chronic pain, there is an overwhelming, unequivocal evidence base, a strong evidence base that hypnotherapy can help. It can often help when nothing else is helping. If the person has already worked their way through the maximum dose of painkillers, what else can they do? You know, hypnotherapy can help. It's absolutely crystal clear. There's a ton of evidence that goes back, 40 years, and it can help. So it's just words, it's just imagination. We can help doctors. We can help doctors by freeing their surgery of people who are anxious, in unnecessary chronic pain, and who are suffering the symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. Absolutely, we can help. So just get involved.
I will put the link. Obviously, there is a study that was delivered or done in France by INSERM, which is like a scientific institute in 2015, and they actually have the same results because it's quite hard to demonstrate the efficiency or efficacy of hypnosis because it's such a relationship-based interaction and process. But they actually managed, just the way you said it, to show with a strong level of evidence that concerning chronic pain and uh, I can't remember the name in English, but
Yeah.
bowel syndrome,
Yeah.
irritated bowel syndrome,
Yeah.
we have good results. Um, Time is flying, and I want to make sure that we make the most of it. I think, given your history, especially with the performing and the street hypnosis, impromptu hypnosis, I put aside the magic and the mentalism because it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a bit
Just
different.
tricks.
Uh, but nice tricks, but I mean, that's quite impressive. But I mean, in my practice, and I guess I project onto you that it's a backbone of your practice. I think there was a misunderstanding in France for a while about Ericksonian hypnosis being really like sophrology or like a relaxation and visualization. I believe when you read and study Erickson, there is lots of really strong hypnosis, sometimes direct hypnosis with like hypnotic phenomena and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And uh, I wonder how you feel and how you teach having those tools, those strong hypnosis tools, to the benefit of your clients. And I think one of point of concern would be to make sure our clients don't feel directed, or they don't feel the hypnosis is done by the hypnotist, which those, I don't know, pattern interrupting can give the impression, or stage hypnosis can give this impression that it's the hypnotist that does it. How do you
Yeah.
balance those tools and the spirit of nurturing the autonomy of your clients?
Yes. Yes. No, it's a very good question. And I think there is a sweet spot actually where therapists who perhaps primarily are giving suggestions to relax, and performers who are giving suggestions you can hallucinate. I think there's a sweet spot. Now, you can absolutely do good, lasting therapeutic work um, with, just essentially relaxotherapy, encouraging the person to relax, to go deeper. The person doesn't move. They often don't say anything. They just sit still. And there is likely to be a portion of them thinking, I don't think I'm hypnotized. Is this hypnosis? I think he thinks maybe, oh, I need to scratch my nose. Am I allowed to move? And so on. So that can be a distraction. You can say, look, it's just relaxation. You'll be able to hear me. You'll drift up, you'll drift down. That's all okay. You can say all these things, but there's something missing from the relaxotherapy experience. And this gets really to the heart of the hypnotic experience, which is there's a reason we use this word suggestion. Okay. And if you look into its origin, I'm sure it comes through in the French suggere or something like that, to bring up, to bring on board, to carry on. Okay. So hypnotists use the word suggestion in a certain way. But I find many of them overlook its real meaning. And the classic suggestion effect, actually, there are many theories of hypnosis. Some people think it's a special state. Some people think it's just a social happening. And some people think it's somewhere between the two, where you're using, your faculties to produce a different experience. But all of them seem to have some consensus that for an interaction to be hypnotic, they would experience the classic suggestion effect. And the classic suggestion effect is the experience that something is happening. So it's not just something you're doing, but something's happening. There is a response that is becoming or has become automatic. Okay. So often when lay people, not us now, but everyone else thinks of hypnosis, they think they make you do stuff. They make it so you can't stand up. They make it so you can't stop dancing or whatever. Because we go around with a sense of control. We have a sense of, I am in here making decisions, choosing tea or coffee, choosing this coffee or this coffee. It feels like I am the chooser. I am making decisions. The point being, your subjective experience is, I chose to do it. It was a conscious, voluntary act, even if it was of the imagination. Compared to, it was involuntary, it was automatic, there was nothing I could do about it. It just happened. So between the two, this is really what hypnosis is about as far as I'm concerned. We collaborate so that you can have a non-volitional experience. It's a collaborative act of the imagination. It's not a special state. We can suggest any state. We can go into any state we want. But what we're engaging in is a process. It's a collaborative act of the imagination where you can have the experience of your response to that happening automatically as if you're uninvolved. So it seems like a paradox. Is it possible for someone to be in control and overlook that fact and experience stuff? Well, yes, it is. In fact, most of the best experiences we're going to have in life and most of the um, optimal states we may wish to find ourselves in are exactly that. We go out, let's say someone is with a crowd and they're watching their favorite team. They would like to get caught up in that to the point where they're just chanting, they're just singing. They might go to the disco, they might go to a club, they may learn, dance or movement or music with the hope of getting lost. And they're just playing. They are experiencing flow. It's just coming out of them. What was I doing, last night? So why would people get inebriated? What is it we're chasing? Why would someone go on a roller coaster? It's because we enjoy brushing up against this automatic level of responding.
Which obviously happens within problems.
It happens, yes.
On the dark side.
That's exactly the point, actually. I almost forgot. The point is that that's how our clients arrive. I just get jealous. I just get angry. I eat this thing and my stomach does this, right? I can't do anything about it. I can't stop it. I can't start it. I can't swing the golf club. So again, it's not just about the problem, it's about our subjective relationship to the problem, right? And most of our clients are looking for a sense of control. That's not necessarily what they need, but they're looking to have, I can control my anger. I can now control it. So I don't get triggered. I can do it. Right? So again, let's just come back to the question because I know time's running on. The sweet spot is for you as a hypnotist to give your therapy clients experience of ideomotor movement, and you may even wish to turn that into some kind of ideomotor communication. So these are non-conscious, automatic finger twitches, hand movements, hand levitations, the stuff Erickson was doing 50, 60 years ago, probably longer. Ideomotor movement, because we may be used to it as hypnotherapists, but when a client comes in focused on their phobia or their pain, and then this starts happening, they can't stop it. Then they have this moment of it's working. It's something is happening. I don't know what's happening. And are other suggestions that things will happen, that the tensions can dissolve, the thoughts and feelings can leave the body, can leave the mind, the pain can dissolve, the kind of get carried along in this moment. This is happening now, this is happening.
But they say, oh, sorry to interrupt. They say ideomotor responses can be carried out without hypnosis.
Absolutely.
I myself use it, I think, just the way you said it, as a convincer that something can happen by itself. And then, and we have Antoine Garnier in France. I don't know if you know him. He's like a really good professional. And I go along with his idea that it's a great doorway to entering the belief that you can go in a trance, you can change. And then, as far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to use ideomotor responses to trigger a beginning of a trance and positive beliefs toward what can happen, then going into deeper relaxation and imagination so that we get a more stable trance and then maybe come up from it so we can have a working trance.
Uh, You're right. It can do all of those things. It can act as a convincer. It can be a doorway. It can promote a belief. And that's all good. But if you think about it, all of those things sound slightly deceptive. Like I'm doing this. I know the body does this, and it might convince you of more. So that's good. But to me, it's more than that. It's not just that it will convince you or give you a belief. It is the very crux of both the problem and the solution. It's the reason your efforts to change it have not worked. It's the reason the person who's in pain is, yeah, being careful to, they're resisting, actually. They are resisting an experience they expect to have. Okay, I'm going to try not to think about it.
Yeah.
They are resisting. So this is kind of built into their problem. They are maintaining the problem to some degree with resistance. So I think of idiomotor stuff. Again, it does all of those things. You're right. It convinces them it's something's happening. It's all good. But actually, it's more fundamental than that. Their problem is an idio problem. Right? It's
Ideomotor
exactly the same.
or
Their
idiosensory,
problem, I sometimes say when I'm teaching self-hypnosis, your problem is self-hypnosis. Your problem is made of the same stuff that we are going to use to help you overcome it. I'll show you what I mean. Give me your hand. Look at your hand. Look at your hand like you've never looked at it before. Do not look at me. Do not look away. Look at your hand like you've never looked at it. The colors, the lines between those lines. And if that deeper part of you is willing to look at this, then that hand will move. It will move in some way. I don't want you to move it. I don't want you to move it consciously. That's it. That's it. That's right. What's happening? It's happening. Anytime it's easier for you just to close your eyes and go there, turn your attention inward. Understand, this is not a state of eyelids. I'm just going to push and push. To be honest, I appreciate you using the word trance. I know it's a very common and popular word and concept, but quite honestly, I never ever think about it anymore. I don't think, are you in a trance? Is it stable? Are you deep enough? I simply think, are you responding? Are you responding? Is there a response? Yes. Can I amplify that response? That's it. That's all I'm thinking. It's a continuous game of ideas and suggestions. There's a wonderful book I keep encouraging people to read. It's written by a doctor using suggestion within an emergency room, of a hospital, responding to things that need to be responded with quickly. And he's knowledgeable about the clinical side and Erickson and everything. When it comes down to it, he just says, hypnosis is ideas provoking responses. That's it. No state, no trance, no deeper. It's ideas provoking responses. I would qualify that and say it's really about ideas provoking automatic responses. You don't know. If you cut your finger, you have no idea how that heals. I mean, even if you paid attention in biology, you don't know how that happens, but you expect it to happen. You put a plaster on there, you expect it to happen. You don't expect it to grow too much skin when you're not looking. You expect it to heal. And that same expectation actually is there when you eat some healthy food or unhealthy food, right? There's a wonderful experiment shown on a fantastic TED talk actually by, I think it's Dr. Alice Crum, where they measure the levels of ghrelin, which is you'd call it a digestive hormone. So it means when you're eating food, your body will produce ghrelin, and that gives your brain the idea that you've had enough.
All right.
It gives you the feeling of fullness. Okay, and they can measure it. When in this experiment, they give one group of people a milkshake, and the label of the milkshake is all about deluxe, luxury, full fat, sugar. This is the milkshake you actually want. They give exactly the same milkshake to another group, but it's healthy, no sugar, no fat, no fun milkshake. And they measure their levels of ghrelin. Those who think they're having a no sugar, no fat, no fun milkshake don't produce as much ghrelin. Now, that is simply from a label. That is, nothing is said. It's simply a different label on a cup. And your digestive system is behaving differently based on what it expects. And you'll say, "Oh, I can't eat now after that milkshake." It's ideas provoking responses. Can you do that? Have you even heard of ghrelin? Do you know how to regulate your ghrelin levels? Well, it turns out you're doing it all the time based on what you expect. So to me, this is, again, if just, purely for the our focus here, even with self-hypnosis, instead of thinking of it as I go into a trance and then I give myself suggestions, it's like, no, your personal reality is
With
already
self-hypnosis.
a fiction. Your problem is already, you're already demonstrating that you have the skill, because when you imagine everyone will laugh at you when you speak, your body responds appropriately for that being a reality. But it was just your imagination. You can stop imagining that anytime, can't you? You can imagine something else entirely, right? Yes. Well, that's what we're going to do. So then we get into it, and whatever container we place around it, whatever the technique is less important as far as I'm concerned than what are called the common factors, right? The therapeutic relationship, the expectations, the feedback that's given, and so on. These common factors are common to all successful therapy, and there's many of them. So it's interesting to kind of say, what's the most effective technique, and should we do this, should we do that? We can have a preference. Our clients may have a preference, but I think it's simpler than that. I believe in their ability to alter their experience. That's it, right? Something my dad will often say is his belief in their ability to change is bigger than theirs.
I think there
He
is this.
will outbelieve them. If they don't believe in themselves, he will outbelieve them.
I think
He
there's
has
this
a
quote with Ericsson, a client from Ericsson, and he was addicted to heroin, and he was like, I really believed I couldn't get out of it, but the Dr. Ericsson believed stronger than I did, So
Sure. It's important. Can you say it? If someone is in chronic pain, they've been in chronic pain for 25 years, that they've already had all the painkillers you can have. They're on 28 tablets a day. Nothing is touching their pain. Can you look them in the eye and say, I can help you? Let's try something. Give me your hand. Can you outbelieve them? Yes, you can, because it's possible. The truth is, right now, they're doing everything perfectly to maintain their pain. They are focused on it. They are catastrophizing about it. They are making stories up about it. They are repeating painful phrases in their head. There is room for maneuver in their experience. Even if it's not complete freedom, there is room for maneuver. So you look them in the eye and you say, I can help you. And that it's already begun. The process has already begun. People feel better, remember, when they've booked an appointment.
60% in the academic literature I read.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just the fact that I've now got an appointment with the doctor or the therapist. I already feel a little bit better. I can relax a little bit knowing I will be cared for. You know, help is coming.
Yeah.
Relax.
Are you in a rush, or can we just keep on for a
I
couple
don't
of
think
minutes?
so. Whatever I was supposed to be doing, I'm late already, so that's
Well,
okay.
let's sum it up. But yeah, in terms of self-hypnosis, I had this representation that is like three different things, and I think we can join each other there. It's obviously techniques and a state. And those techniques help achieve a state where it seems we are more flexible, or it's easier to reprogram or to reimagine something or imagine differently. And then what are we going to imagine differently what are we going to change is all our automatic processes, even our personality, our habits, who we think we are. And I feel exactly the same way as you do concerning the core processes that are hypnotic somehow. And I feel self-hypnosis, the state, and even the word, you present yourself as a hypnotist, which will be a nice way of coming back to the beginning of this interview, which is a strong trigger for imagination, for positive imagination.
Yeah,
And I had this idea that the purpose of self-hypnosis, the techniques and the state, is to not have to do it anymore, because
right.
your general self-hypnosis has become efficient enough, or flexible enough, so that you don't have to go like, oh, I have to do something to improve. It's like either it improves by itself or it's already improved, but maybe it's like a goal that can never be reached somehow, but there is room for exploration there. There's no real question behind my uh, my
Yeah,
saying.
no, look, I was listening intently there, and it's fine. I think it's worth remembering as well articulated and thought out as that was, that it's just a model. We you know, because we have to be careful when we say there's a state, and you kind of also said that in this state, suggesting it's a special state, we are more receptive to the suggestions that are coming our way. Again, that is a very popular view of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. It's a very popular way of talking about it. It would be the reason that we are putting the state change first, okay, and then thinking that has helped with that. There's plenty of evidence that would question some of those ideas. That the first being that there is a special state,
Yeah, it's more
because
a family
we
of
haven't.
states, yeah,
Yeah,
of
but
deeply,
you know,
deeply
we can then
focused.
widen the goalpost and say, well, you know, it's any altered state, or it's a relaxed state, or it's a focused state, or it's an absorbed. We can. I've done this myself, you know, many times over 20 years. My view has constantly changed, but the the reality of the research, and there's tons of it, is that we haven't found that signature. We don't have a neurobiological signature that is hypnotized.
There is the default mode that is
Sure,
unactivated, and the deep
sure,
focus,
there
which
is.
seems to be a
There
signature.
is. I'm not saying there isn't any neuroscience, okay, but a lot of the neuroscience suggests that no, it's the nature of the task that you're involved in. The reason that you are seeing this part of the brain light up with suggestions for
Mm.
pain relief is because of the task that you're engaged in. I'm not suggesting your brain activity doesn't change. What I'm suggesting is you could just as easily argue you're never in the same state twice, right? You're never in the same state twice. This thing is constantly moving based on the ideas that are being presented to you and the model of the world that is being built based on those expectations and those responses. So it's okay we can absolutely alter someone's experience. We can alter their state. We can alter our own state by doing 6 jumps in the air. We can alter our experience by eating our favorite food. Absolutely. We can think about it and we can do it. Is it a necessity for the acceptance of the suggestions that follow? And the science is clear. No, it is not. When we test people, when we do the SHSS or any of the suggestibility tests, the results with or without an induction, pretty much the same. On a 12-point scale, there's 1 point in it. You can do arm levitation, hands stuck, imagined auditory experiences, disgust, you can forget stuff. You can do all of this without going into a specific version of the default mode network activity. I know, because I've made no effort to do that. I've given the suggestions and these things can still happen. So that's not the same as saying hypnosis doesn't exist. It's just saying that we don't have to look at it through the lens of an altered state having to happen first. Instead, we might look at it at the lens of, I have the ability to alter my experience. Like, I'm doing it now. Even as we're having this conversation, I'm not doing it. It's happening now.
It's happening. Yeah.
It's happening now. And if I wanted to, go into some tradition to do it, if I wanted to chant, if I wanted to sing, if I wanted to breathe, if I wanted to go and spin around until I'm in some special trance state, then surely I could do that. But these things, as far as I'm concerned, reveal our profound capacity for self-modification.
Which are innate.
Yeah. They are not the cause of this capacity. They are a way that we can show up in a certain way, that we can engage in a certain way. And yes, a lot of it is transmitted in the idea of go into a special state, or go into a special place, or engage in a special practice, or stare at a particular object, or say a particular thing. Right? All of those things have reveal our capacity for self-modification, but they're not the cause of it, even though it seems so reliable that, well, that's what I do, that's what it is. I would encourage us to adopt a broader frame. Another phrase that I think you'll enjoy with regarding our ability to alter our experiences. Clearly, it can lead to us constructing subjective experiences that misrepresent reality. Okay, so let's say, for example, someone needs to have a medical procedure, and the general idea would be that would be invasive and painful, and there's needles involved. Clearly, there would be some pain, right? So if we take the person who has a phobia of needles, or a person who has a fear of what they might find out by having the procedure, then the chances are they will modify that experience. They will misrepresent reality, and it will become a more painful and difficult and intrusive experience. Somebody else, again, a lovely piece of research suggested simply turning your head away from the site of an injection, nothing else, simply turning your head, lowers the perceived pain by 25%. If we engage in some of our hypnotic techniques, if we dissociate, if we imagine the arm is rubber, if we distract ourselves, we symbol, whatever we may do, then some people could have that procedure and feel nothing. Right? In both cases, this misrepresentation of reality, whatever that is, by the way, but let's say it's somewhere between these two, is an act of self-deception. Okay, it's self-deception. When it's done intentionally, such as in self-hypnosis, it can be considered a strategic, just say it again, an act of strategic self-deception.
Lovely.
Yeah, understanding self-hypnosis in this way or hypnosis in this way empowers us not to just see it as a special state of mystical art. It's a natural extension of the human experience. It's already embedded in our culture. It's embedded in every culture. There are just as many ways to do it in cultures that have never heard of hypnosis. Right? And we look at it and say, we see, think of traditional healing practices that, from you may have seen in different parts of the world, even what appear to be very primitive practices that we know can help. Right? We look at it through our lens of hypnosis. We say, they're going into a trance. They're dancing themselves into a trance, or whatever. Right? The fact is, it's just that their cultural heritage has given them permission in this way to alter their personal experience, to move towards specific outcomes, to leverage this capacity for personal transformation and fulfillment. So again, sometimes I find myself very narrow definitions, sometimes very broad, right? And this is how I move between these two. But self-hypnosis, as far as I'm concerned, is any act of strategic self-deception so that I might alter my experience.
And that's lovely. I totally agree. And it's, I don't know, it's as reasonable to believe that it's a hypnotic trance because of the words we use as, I don't know, the spirit of the trees or maybe the ancestors. And the stories can be many. And sometimes we get confused between correlation and causality. And we have to be really, really, I don't know how to put it in English, but be really careful about the interpretations and the beliefs we have. Obviously, well, we can use tools that seem to work most of the time, and that's, I believe, good enough, and we keep on searching.
Look, I'm not suggesting we should be cold, clinical, minimal. I think if we accept it's our cultural inheritance, its cultural heritage gives it a particular shape and a particular dressing, then it's perfectly okay bring the magic, to wear the cloak, to have the clinic, to do whatever's required to build expectation and to get the person to engage. We can do all of that without being deceptive. We can do all of that without necessarily believing that these deeds, that the dressing is the thing, right? I'm quite happy to use an induction. I'm quite happy for people to relax. I'm happy for people to go deeper into this experience. That doesn't mean I'm sitting there thinking, are they at level 2 or level 3? Because I just think, are they responding? Are they responding to deeper? Are they responding to deeper into this experience? Are they responding to even more relaxed? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. Keep going. Keep going. Keep encouraging.
It's funny and a bit frustrating because, again, our time is about to be up, but I'm really fond of another hypnotherapist or hypnotist, a French hypnotist whose name is Jordan Véro. I don't know if you've heard of him. And he sees the induction as training the clients to develop the skills that he will need to solve the problem, which is really a different way of thinking induction as going into a trance.
That's wonderful stuff. I used to run a hypnotism conference called Change Phenomena. All of the lectures are actually online. And there's a good one on there by a guy called Michael Perez. He's an American guy, but he lives in Belgium, I believe. And yeah, that's worth a watch if you want to check it out. It's similar idea. He relates the kind of induction you do to the kind of issue you're dealing with, and presents a pretty strong case from this kind of skill based perspective, which I think is a good way of looking at our capacity to alter our experience. It's a skill. It doesn't just because it's happening all the time doesn't mean you're skilled. So again, another way of thinking of self hypnosis is I'm learning the skill of doing this. So,
More strategically or more voluntarily.
yeah, more. I'm learning the skill of strategic self deception.
Lovely. That shall be the sentence of today's interview. Anthony, it was a delight, really exciting and inspiring. It made me feel like, man, Anthony should come to France and give a seminar or something like that.
I would love to. I have done a couple of times in the past. I actually used to live in Paris years and years ago for 18 months. I worked at a famous, actually an English pub called the Frog
Frogs
and a
and
Roast
roast
Beef
beef. Yes,
in
we
Rue
met there.
Saint-Denis. I've hypnotized many people in there. I once looked around in there, and everywhere I looked, indoors and outdoors, 'cause it has the street area, people were getting hypnotized. So I haven't done it for a while. I have a lot of love for France and for Paris especially. Um, if you can organize translation, let's organize an event.
Let's make it happen. Thank you again for your time and generosity and overall work. That's, again, I think really important to our practice today. And thank you for responding positively to today's invitation and to the future ones we just set up. And obviously for the people who were watching us or listening to us, please feel free to shoot a message, a comment. You can like and share. Obviously, you know the rules of the social networks. And Anthony is really generous again, sharing his knowledge and experience. So I'm sure if you have questions, feel
That's
free to raise them.
my pleasure. It's an enjoyable conversation to have this lunchtime. Thank you very much. Cheers,
Thank you
Adrian.
so much. See you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.